Hi, it's Rachel here from off.road.cc, and today it's time to review a really important and interesting e-bike. So today it's review time for the Specialized Turbo Levo SL in the Comp Carbon spec. In a nutshell, the Levo SL is a lighter, less powerful version of Specialized normal e-bike, the Levo. Coming in about 4 kilos lighter, the SL also drops power and gives a more intuitive feel. Basically, it's a halfway house between a full-fat e-bike and a regular leg-powered bike. So that then begs the question, who would the Levo SL be aimed at? So I reckon it's targeted at the rider who wants an e-bike, wants the longer range and the increased climbing ability that comes with e-bikes, while still retaining the more playful nature of a normal bike. As that SL weighs less than the equivalent full-fat e-bike, it's nearer to that acoustic bike feel. The bike I have here, where it in its normal Comp Carbon spec, would be a 19 kilo e-bike. So that's 150mm travel, it's a 29er and it gets Specialized FSR suspension linkage. To power it, the Levo SL gets a 360 watt-hour battery, a 240 watt motor, which together produce a much more natural feel to the insistence. Plus, you could further extend your range by buying a £300 range extender battery, which gives you another 160 watt-hours or 50% of your battery life again. Then, to put that battery life into perspective before I delve into the motor tech, I'm 60 kilos and I regularly see 1,000 metres of climbing using trail on 50% and turbo on 100% without using a range extender. Specialized use the same phone app to go with this bike as they do with their Levos, and that app allows you to alter the assistance with simple sliders within your mobile phone. So if I ride this bike in eco mode set to 20%, then it feels like a normal bike, the motor just giving enough assistance to overcome the extra weight of the e-bike. In that mode, the bike will let you climb over 2,500 metres without a range extender. So riding like this, on one ride, I managed 750 metres of climbing and used less than 20% of the battery, which is pretty impressive. That mission control app is pretty impressive too. It's simple to use, it connects to the bike every time without fail, and as well as being able to alter the modes within the app, you can also do lots of other things. So it allows you to check your battery health, the battery life, whether you need a software update for the bike, and there's other functions too, such as being able to set the ride time that you'd like and the distance, or your distance goals, so then the bike manages the power and the battery modes, so you've got enough battery and enough battery reserves to ensure that you can complete your ride. The motor is a collaboration between a company called Marley and Specialized. It's exactly the same motor that's used in Specialized's new Creo E road bikes that were launched last year. And rather than a belt-driven motor that's in the full-fat Levo, this one is geared, and whilst it's noisier, in my time I've tested this bike for 6 months, it appears to be more reliable than the Bros motors on the Levo. Power output is 35 Newton meters, which is down compared to the 55 Newton meters that you see in the Fazua motors, which are used in other lightweight e-bikes or e-gravel bikes, but I hardly think you'll notice. The Levo SL produces smooth power delivery and will get you speedily from bottom to top. Not as fast as a full-fat Levo, that's granted, but a great deal faster than on an acoustic bike. If I'm riding with regular bikes, I leave my bike in that eco mode that I told you about on 20% assistance, and I work as hard as they are. Then, if I'm riding with full-fat e-bikes, I have to ride in turbo on 100% assistance, while those other normal e-bikes ride in their trail mode. That's just a quick comparison of the power outputs of the two bikes, and that's where the riders will be keeping the same speed and using pretty much the same energy. The smooth power delivery of the Levo SL is intuitive. There's none of that real kick up the arse feeling that you get with a more powerful e-bike. Rather, it's a gentle, consistent helping hand. I've been messing with the settings in the app and using my bike in trail mode, but then I set the trail mode to 35% assistance with 100% assistance at peak power, so when I'm really pushing through the pedals. This conserves battery life as well as giving some oomph when you're riding something steep or a techie climb. It also means there's no need for me to keep swapping modes. It works a treat, and I found that it really extended battery life over changing between modes whilst I ride. The only other thing you really need to know about the motor and battery is this: you can't take the battery out of this bike like you can in a regular Levo. So you'll need to be able to bring the bike inside or have electricity points out in your garage to plug the bike in to charge it. So moving on, we also really need to talk about the spec of the bike. And whilst it's alright, it's not all great news. So bike components for your £6,250 aren't all top of the range, but remember, you are paying for the tech and the e-bike tech in this bike. So for your dollar, you get a Fox Rhythm 34 float fork and a Fox Float DPS performance shock. That leaves the bike a little underforked. The 34 is a flexi and they dive under load, especially with the weight of an e-bike behind it. The shock performs slightly better, but it's not the best damping experience that you'll ever have, and that shock is pretty chattery. I also kept inadvertently hitting that 3-position lever from open into trail mode whilst riding, which is one of the most frustrating things frustrating quirks that I've experienced on a bike that I've ridden lately. So I temporarily fixed this by shoving some Sugru next to the lever to stop it moving at all. That left me obviously just with open mode, but that's totally fine. I've also dipped into the Facebook Turbo Levo SL owners group to see what riders thought of their bikes. And there's lots of fork upgrades going on there. Mainly people are putting RockShox lyrics on. So it made me think that maybe Spec will think about possibly a new RockShox Zeb or a 36 upgrade for next year. I put a set of old Pikes on mine for experiment's sake, and it makes the bike a whole lot harder hitting. Elsewhere, there's a SRAM NX Eagle drivetrain, SRAM guide R brakes, Roval wheels, and 2.3-inch Butcher and a 2.3-inch Eliminator tyre on the rear. Specialised cockpit fills the rest of the spec, plus there's an X-Fusion Manic dropper post. And it's all kit that works well enough, but if you really want to ride this bike hard, you'll likely want better brakes. Sounds like I'm having a massive moan, but in general the components are completely usable, and it's alright in a trail e-bike setting, which is clearly the category Specialised are aiming for with this bike. On to the geometry. Geometry of the Levo SL is pretty much identical to the Levo, but it gets shorter chainstays. Geometry is not the most progressive. It is slightly conservative in nature, but it sits in that average trail bike category. So it's not going to put any riders off, but it's not exactly super modern either. In terms of this large, it gets a 455mm reach, 66° head angle, 12/17 wheelbase and 437 chainstays. Then the seat angle is a little slack at 74.6 degrees. And talking about that geometry leads me nicely onto the ride of this bike. Like I said, firmly in the trail bike category with 150mm travel and the spec that we've talked about. This bike is built for long days in the saddle with added e-assistance and the ability to have some fun on the single track too. In this spec, push the bike harder downhill and the suspension components are easily overwhelmed, but on less techie trails it's great fun, and the extra stability given by the weight makes this a super stable ride, and it's really confidence inspiring. That extra weight helps push the tyres into the ground, and it's really easy to use it to advantage, adding grip and traction and making you ride faster and faster. When I'm descending, I usually keep this bike in trail mode when I'm not in my 35-100% mode. And that's enough of a helping hand when pedalling in the trail whilst feeling natural in its assistance. The bike weighs 19 to 20 kilos in this spec, so if you're pedalling over 15 miles an hour, it's not as much as an effort as if you were pedalling a heavier full-fat e-bike over that 15 mile an hour speed. Winching back up to the top is fairly efficient in terms that you have a motor, but the seated climb position could be more comfortable. That slack effective seat tube angle I told you about earlier leaves you in a rather stretched out position. As I've said, the Levo SL makes it easy for you to determine how much effort you put in. As I've already talked about, the modes can be altered to use as little or as much assistance as you like. I really like the Levo SL for this middle ground. It's an e-bike, but the nature of the assistance is supportive, and it's really natural rather than super powerful. It's a total ride extender, and I'm really sold on the concept. Looking back at my Strava, I've done nearly 90,000 metres of descending just in this year, and that's all because of e-bikes and mostly because of this one I've had since about February. The bike makes me get up and go out. It makes me want to ride when I'm feeling tired, and it makes me able to ride when I'm feeling tired. It also has the ability to take away some of the effort of climbing if you wanted that on a ride, while still allowing you to work hard the next day if you want to. Using this bike, it can feel just like a normal bike and makes me think that I could probably have this as my one bike and not have an acoustic and an e-bike. So on that, if you told me from tomorrow I could just have one bike, I'd have to give back all my test bikes, sell my normal bike and just have one, then I'd choose this one. Hands down, it would be the one. It makes me realise that I really do love e-bikes, and so much so that I know that I probably couldn't be without one, and this is my perfect mix of acoustic and electric. Yeah, the spec on this bike isn't really all that, and I'd need to leave some cash for the upgrades, but the concept of this bike and the execution of the motor and the systems associated with it are the best in its class right now. The Specialized Turbo Levo SL Comp Carbon throws a cat amongst the pigeons in e-bike terms, bringing a sleek, light, reliable electric bike to the market and making a really excellent concept a reality. I'd be really interested to know your thoughts on the subject. Do you think the same of me? Do you think you could have this bike as your one bike? I reckon the industry is about to boom with bikes like this. So let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are and where your preferences would lie in e-bike terms. Thanks very much for watching. If you want to read a full review of this bike, it's over on www.off.road.cc now. All you need to do is put Levo SL in the search bar at the top and the review will appear. I'll be back next week with a roundup of some of the best gravel bikes you can buy, or you might get a break from me and find that you've got John with a review of the new Fox 36s. Thanks again for watching and we'll catch you soon.